all muttered one of these, potentially another adjective here or there when dealing with row security in our systems. So hopefully after today you have a better overall understanding of row security, how it can be used to benefit you, and any questions that that could be answered. Well, what is company and business unit access? Company with the alias of CO and business unit alias of MCU. Access is how you limit what data is visible and actionable to users. So basically, who can see what and what can they do with that data in the system. In this security workbench is where you would control this, and it's the type 4 security, again, row security. The row security enabled flag is in data dictionary. It's under the SCFG column that you see here, and it is found in the F9210 table. If the flag is set to a Y, then row security is enabled. If it's blank, then row security is not enabled. It would not matter what you try and do at that point. If that record is blank, you would not be able to book transactions or data or rows or security records for that for this type of security. There are 504 aliases that are enabled for row security in 9.2. However, some of them are not enabled. For instance, the KCOO, MCU, and HMCU, and we'll get into a second on how to enable and disable aliases for row security. So you would navigate to the data dictionary. In the item specifications tab that you see here, I've got there's a lot of data presented here, and all of it does matter, but for the purpose of what we're discussing today, it is just going to be the alias, which is the top right box that I have highlighted, and the lower left box for the row security. So as you can see, we're filtered on MCU as the alias, and the row security box is checked, meaning it is enabled for row security. On the adverse, I just mentioned a minute ago that some aliases are not delivered enabled, and KCOO would be one of them. So again, in data dictionary, item specifications tab, still have all the pertinent information here, but we're focusing on these two. You've got the alias upright of KCOO, and you can see that it is not checked for row security. Simply just check that to enable it, and that way that alias is usable in your security system. Modes of row security. Row security works in either exclusive or inclusive mode. Exclusive mode defines a range to be excluded, meaning anything not excluded is visible to the user. So again, enter what you want hidden. You need no records in an exclusive mode, excuse me. So for an example, you have a company, or excuse me, a system has companies 1, 2, 5, 6, and 10. So there's 5 companies available. The user should only be able to see 1, 2, and 5, so they should not see 6 and 10. In this system, if you're in an exclusive mode system of row security, you would need to have records for, you could either, we'll get into star or tables related, but you would need to have records for company 6 and company 10, either view no or add, change, delete no, for them not to be able to see and or interact with that data. On the adverse, inclusive mode defines the range to be included. Anything not included is hidden. So you need the yes values. Taking the same scenario, you've got companies 1, 2, 5, 6, and 10. You want the user to be able to, again, see 1, 2, and 5, not 6 and 10. So you need the yes records for companies 1, 2, and 5. You would not need the no records for company 10. Those are your main differences between those two modes right there and how they're controlled in the system. Something to note here, though, no records in the system at star public, at a role level, at a user level. If there are no roles or records, row security records in the system for a user, then that user inherits in either mode full access. So definitely something to keep in mind when you're deciding whether to go with inclusive, exclusive, or switch, and coming up with your plan to grant the access going forward. Row security is delivered in exclusive mode. To change that, you just simply go in and to the 950. There'll be a row exit off to the side that you'll be able to click on row security, and it'll show inclusive and exclusive mode. So as you see here, this one is checked down on the lower left of exclusive row security. To change that, you just simply click the inclusive. Will warn you that if the system is already configured and you have some sort of plan in place for row security distribution, then switching this could cause some issues. So this is more of you switch to, if you've got a plan going forward, you already implemented the plan and you're ready to switch it from inclusive to exclusive or vice versa, or you just got JD Edwards out of the box or installed 9.2 and you're deciding which mode to go with. And here's how it would be done. You can check it through the P00950 form exit, like mentioned, and you'll see the exclusive inclusive button. You click that and you'll see that screen that I just showed previously. If you go into Data Browser, you'll see the FS-ATN3 column and the FS user column. Those are the inclusive, exclusive signifiers. So FS user is going to tell you whether it's inclusive or exclusive, and then it's going to depend on the FS-ATN3 rating, which is either 0 or 1, 0 being inclusive, 1 being exclusive. And something to note that if the setting has never been applied, so you just got it out of the box and you're operating in the default exclusive row security mode, then the entry for exclusive in the FS user column will not exist in your table. So you may wonder if you're on this call because you're a new JDE user or you're upgrading and you need to know this information here, then that's something to keep in mind, that you will not see exclusive if you've just been operating in the default exclusive mode. And just to notate this, the best practice and Oracle recommendation is to use inclusive mode. It's typically easier to grant users what you want them to have than to deny what you don't want them to have. Again, going back to our instances a minute ago with the company 1, 2, 5, 6, and 10, granting yes in inclusive mode, again, that's the preferred and best practice, as it's usually easier going forward and sustainable in the future. All right, row security can be applied to named tables. Named tables being P0911, or excuse me, F0911, F0901, F0101. So you're not using a star all, which we'll get into a second. So you're using a name table. Most aliases in the system go across dozens and dozens of tables. So if you're using a named table, then you're naming that MCU for that table only. So for instance, MCU is used in 1,246 tables, and company CO is used at 749 tables in the system. So if you're locking it down at star all, you're locking MCU, which again we'll get into in a second, but you're locking it at all of those tables, versus if you use MCU at F0901, you're locking it down at just that one table. And not every company uses every table. So if you don't use every module in JDE, so some of the tables don't pertain to you. Fixed assets is a 50-50 whether companies use that and utilize that in JD Edwards. So obviously any MCU tied to an F12 table, and if you're not using fixed assets, is not going to pertain to you. So you do need to look through and see what tables and aliases pertain to your unique situation. And again, when applied to specific tables, only those tables are restricting access to the data, nothing else. As mentioned, row security can be applied to star all tables. So we're not naming a specific table. We're saying MCU, wherever in the system it is used, I either do or don't want access to transact on this certain data. Using star all is great because it reduces the entries in the security setup and your security, your lines of security that are in the system. However, it depends on the structure of the business and who needs to use what aliases across what business units / companies. So it needs to be planned out and thought of in advance before throwing a star all out there. Just because I think it works, it could lock people down, or in the adverse grant access to too many users when they shouldn't have that type of access. excuse me, and then some additional considerations down here. When using star all with MCU, it can cause issues, and most likely will cause issues with the F41001 and the F41002, which is the branch lines constants in the unit of measure conversion. It's because these tables typically use they use blanks in their data. So that's why the last bullet point here, you see you must use range of all to all and star blanks to star blanks for those issues to be resolved. It's good to use those whenever we use those anytime we're using MCU. So have those in there for your records of security in your roles, or however you're setting up your row security, so that you can forego any of these issues. All right, so what's the difference? Exclusive assumes open access unless explicitly denied. We've mentioned that. In inclusive on the adverse assumes no access. This only applies to tables that you have applied row security to if using named tables. And assuming that you have not locked it down as star public. We'll get to that in a minute because there is ways to do that. And one last time, just to reiterate, because this is a big one that is somewhat confusing. If you've applied row security to a named table, for instance, F0901 down here, then it is only applicable to that table. It's not looking at any of the other tables. So any of the programs that use F0901 will inherit the security that you have given to that user for table F0901. So keep that in mind. Again, to look at what programs use what tables. MCUs using with tables, to find those types of things out is good to know how your row security will interact when you set it up. All right, the SQL statements are where the magic happens. So we're going to take a look at a couple of different SQL statements, one on exclusive mode, one on inclusive, show you the difference between the two and why one is preferred over the other. So you have a user that is restricted to company 75, access to company 75 through company 100. So anything from 75 to 100 they have, you want them to have access to, and then 150 to 200. In an exclusive mode, remember, we need the no's. We need to tell them, no, you can't access this. This is what your security records would look like. You'd have your role, user. We prefer it role, which we'll get into, but it can be done at user. You have your name table versus a star all. You have your alias, your CO or your MCU, and then here's your values, and here's where you define how you want or what you want your user to be able to see based on the mode that you are in. So again, we're in exclusive here. We're talking about this. We need the no's. So we want to say, no, you can't access companies 0 through 74, 101 through 149, and 201 through the rest of the companies, which is 99999. So all these no's here, you can see we've left out these ranges up here, meaning you try and ping company 73 for anything, it's going to say, no, you don't have this access, you're not allowed. Or if you're trying to pull data for company 71, you're not going to be able to pull data. The grid will stay empty. Now, the ranges that you can is, again, 71 to 100, 150 to 200. In exclusive mode, this is how you would set it up. In exclusive mode, your SQL statements would look like this. You would have the prod DTA F0010, where CCCO not between your 0 and your 74, again, your first line of security up there, and not between 101 and 149, and not between 201 and 99999. So you can see the SQL statement's a bit long. There's a lot that you're telling it to chew through. And then we're going to look at the adverse here right now in inclusive mode. So same scenario, user needs access to 75 to 100, 150 to 200. You can tell we've already knocked out a line of security with the inclusive mode, and we're telling it yeses. So we are only telling it the range that it needs to see, and there's two ranges that it needs. So 75 to 100 and 150 to 200. And the SQL statement looks like this. You can tell, and I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide because it compares the two, but it is already, you can already tell it's much smaller. But here they are right next to each other. You've got your prod DTA F0010, where CCC 0 between 0.75 and 100, or between 150 and 200. So it's looking simple for that. Anything in there is a go. and you can tell that it's a much cleaner, much neater, and much shorter SQL statement to have to enter. All right, we talked a minute ago about using star public to potentially deny or grant all. Denying all, it can be done, just like it is in what our security team here at GSI recommends for your functional roles, is to have job-based roles. Process-based versus job-based, where you're granting a transaction or a process, individual process. You can do that with row security. You lock it down as star public, and I have each mode here with the record you would need for exclusive versus inclusive. Exclusive, to lock down as star public, would be you don't need anything in the from data. You're going to use star all MCU because you want, again, star public star all, any table that uses MCU, we want to deny access to it. Now you're going to think, well, why would you want to do that? Nobody's going to be able to use that MCU. Correct. You're using that as a shut down, grant back. So then you would have to have a plan, come up with roles that we need to create. Again, you can use user level, although it's not recommended. And then if there's anything else at star public, you want to put that at that. But this is the deny all, grant back model for both. So again, exclusive, you don't need data from, you need the data through, which is all the rest of the Z's, and then all the no's. For inclusive, again, star public, star all, because you're locking them all down. And you do not need, here's the difference, you do not need a from data or a through data in an inclusive mode for this lockdown. You just need the no values. And yeah, as mentioned, from and to, they do not matter, so not needed. And then if there's no record at all, again, it assumes open access. So if there's not a star public record denying anything, if there's not a user record for the user, if there's not a role that has any row security records in it, then the user is effectively operating in an open row security system. This is a big one. Using row security with exclusive application security. You have your functional roles that depict what users can access in the system from a programmatic and UBE standpoint. So P4210, P0911, P4310. Can they access these? What can they do when they access them? Your type 1 and type 3 securities. Then you have your row security saying no, you can access, or yes, you can access company 1 and company 2, but you're not going to have access to company 4. Well, you may need to book transactions, orders, potentially payments to that or a business unit within that company or that company in general. But you're not allowed to have the company access in the system to pull up the data, to look at the data, to manipulate the data. You're only allowed to book a transaction to them. So this is what's called cross-company or cross-company transactions. And to get away with this and not have to restructure your row security or give someone too much access that they should not have, is to utilize exclusive application security, which is type 9 in the security workbench. Something to be, and I'll get in on how to use that in a second, but something to be careful of is not to get too broad with this. It is a quick fix. It's a manageable fix, but if not used properly and thought out, it can be used too much, which in effect overwrites row security. So what exactly is exclusive app security when used in conjunction with row security? Again, you have access to company 1 and 2. You need to book something to company 3. You're just not allowed to view and see the data. So you need to be in P4210. You're gonna have a sales order that needs to go out to a MCU or just company 5 in general, but you don't have that access. Exclusive application gives you the ability to enter a security record either at the user level, again, not recommended, or within the role, and you can do it within the row security role, so that the user can access P4210 without the row security applied. He can perform the transaction that he or she needs to perform in that program only, without having to grant company 5 access. It doesn't grant them access to do any other transactions in any other programs. It's just the P4210. So whatever process they need to perform for the company they technically shouldn't have access to see, that is what this is used for. It negates that row security for that program only. So I touched on where you should apply, the exclusive app security for your intercompany transaction. It would be best to apply it at the role, either the role that has the process or the role that the data security, the row security role. And here's why we say to put it at the row security role and then that's okay, is because the user still has to have access, functional access, type 1 and type 3, action and application access, security access to P4210. If they do not have the ability to run and add, change, and delete within that program, then the type 9 exclusive app security will be overwritten. They have to have the other type of security. They have to be able to run and perform action security within that program for the type 9 security to be picked up. So if you add it into your row security role, and your type 9 mixed in with a type 4 in that role, again, that will not just grant them open access to P4210. They still have to have the application security record and or the action security record. So I just wanted to harp on that. Most people don't understand that when it comes to exclusive application security, rightfully so, but I wanted to get that out so that it's understood how to use this effectively. Okay, so we've gone over most of our high-level row security aspects, what it is, what the difference between the two modes are. So where do we go from here? How do we start planning? Well, first you have to sit down and define how you want your data to be separated out. Do you want it to be at the company level only? Do you want the business unit, or do you want it down to the object account? Do you want multiple levels? Do you want company and business unit? If there's multiple business units, we have a current client that has, I think it was somewhere 500 to 600 business units that go across 8 to 9 companies. So they're multi-layered and they're a bit more complex. Doesn't mean that it's impossible. It just has to be planned and has to be thought out. Okay, can we just give a full company access to a user? Sure. But what about this user that needs company 2 access, but he only needs these business units within company 2? Okay, so we need to construct the role a bit different for that particular user or those users that need that type of access. And then, do you want things locked down or opened up at Star Public? I would say no on the opened up, but lockdown is a potential. We've not seen that in any of our security projects, but again, that does not mean it can't be used and not effective. So with respect to Star Public, you want to know what company or MCU, what aliases have common values across everything that can be either denied to everyone or granted to everyone in the system. So if there's an answer, if there's a yes answer out there to one of those, the FO101 for MCU, everybody they can't change and delete it, but they can view it. Okay, that record could probably stand at Star Public, and it limits records needed to be in other roles or roles needing to be created and assigned to users to grant this particular access. So again, starting with planning, Star Public is a good way to start. It gets some of the low-hanging fruit, if you will, out of the way, and then you can get to your more complex scenarios with row security. So this will need to be granted at Star Public, or every user will need a row security role to restrict the access. Again, if you don't have a Star Public record, if you don't have roles, or at the user level and you're in inclusive or exclusive mode, the user is basically inheriting full access. And then if locking down a value at Star Public, any user that needs to see that value will need a row security role granting them that value. So again, that's the deny all, the no's at Star Public, the grant backs with either the roles which are recommended or at the user level. Continuing to plan, define the tables that need to be secured. Do your preferred data items exist in all the defined tables? Are they used by all of the programs? If not, what additional aliases are needed? Are they enabled? Remember, we went through the how to enable and check to see if they're enabled. You may come up with a plan, and I'm going to use the KCOO alias as an example, but you didn't know that these need to be enabled or that they could be enabled / disabled. But that one's not enabled out of the box in 9.2. So you're trying to use it. You've come up with this plan. It's not working. You know, you're using some of the adjectives we talked about on the first slide. You know, so having this information and pre-planning with this information is crucial. It only makes the process go that much smoother. And then mainly, are you wanting to secure for specific tables or star all tables? If you have the star all ability, it's the best to do that. It limits your transactions. It limits the potential for conflicts in the system, and which, you know, it inadvertently comes back to you know, the security of the IT team to solve. Understand your transactions and what your intercompany transactions are and how they're used in your JDE instance. So know what programs are used intercompany. That way, if you build out this row security and you're having you're going through testing and you're having issues completing some crucial business transactions and processes, that you can link it to the intercompany part and utilize the exclusive row security, or excuse me, exclusive security with the row security to allow those processes to flow. And then if you need details on any of that, utilize the cross-reference or the XREF. You type that into your FastPath if you have it, and you know, that you'll be able to see which tables and which programs cross over multiple aliases and company access. What ranges will the users need access to? Going back to your structure, is it going to be a company level? Is it going to be at a regional level, a department, a site? Depending on how your system's set up, is going to depend on how you need to set your system up. Only thing I wanted to caution you on is just get it only as granular as you need. Not as granular as you can get, but as you need, because the more granular you get, as you can see with some of the scenarios that we've talked about and shown, it only adds complexity. So keeping it less granular for you is going to only help you in the long run. Avoid mutually exclusive settings as well. So for instance, granting access to company 100 and MCU 250 in inclusive mode, but MCU is associated with company 200. So avoid those situations. You can have your companies and your MCUs in the same roles. There's no problem with that. That's a bit of the complexity or the multi-layering that I was mentioning. So you've got company 100, and I'm going to allow you to see MCUs 101 through 140, but not 141 through 160. Okay, that's fine. That's part of company 100. There's no crossing over. There's no issues. You as a user or your users would have an issue with this setup that I just mentioned, company 100 and MCU 250. Most likely, MCU 250 is tied to company 200. In the role that I just mentioned, you would have access to company 100 and MCU 250. Well, that doesn't do you any good because you don't have access to company 200. So again, that's the mutually exclusive part that you need to pay attention to, and make sure that you know that if you are going to go the multi-layered route, that you know which MCUs or BUs connect to which companies. And some of our final thoughts here. A conflict exists when two or more entities are applying security for the same data item or alias with differing values. So your yeses and your nos for the same data item or value. You want to. That's why if you in exclusive or exclusive mode stick to the exclusive, you need to deny. Inclusive, you need to grant. The yeses versus the nos. You shouldn't have in your mode. You should not have multi layers of yeses and nos. It should be a consistent layer of nos and or yeses. The only time you would have a potential for a couple of is when you went the denial route, because you're denying all at star public and then you're granting back the yeses. It's effectively exclusive mode, but you're ensuring that if someone doesn't have a row security role, that they do not have access to everything. So just be careful on your yes and no's, your combinations out there. It would force you to manually create all possible combinations, or use a third-party tool to alleviate any conflicts that could be created if the system wasn't designed properly. And role security hierarchy applies to row security too. It looks at user level first, role, and then star public. So star public records, yes, they're good, but they do apply to everyone. But that's why the security hierarchy still comes in play. You allow everyone, or you deny everyone at the star public level, and then you grant them back at the role. So the role access is going to get picked up first, and if there's nothing there, or it can't find what it's looking for, then it will go search at star public for the appropriate record. So again, just something to keep in mind when setting up the security records themselves. This is a big one too. Keep data security separate from application security roles. Don't mix your type 1s and type 3s with your type 4 security. There's not there's nothing technically wrong with it, other than that it can present multiple issues for a user when it comes to access. It's best to have our action and application, our functional access, if you will, in our functional roles, and our row security access and our row security roles. That way, this allows the user to perform the same functions that are granted to him or her for different business units, with the only difference being the data security role. The other thing is, if you've got all of your functional access mixed with your row security access, it's difficult to alleviate conflicts. For instance, you've got access to a couple of business units or a couple of companies within the I'm going to use job-based here, your AP clerk. Well, you need this person or the next person who gets AP clerk to not have that amount of business unit access. So you either have to deny it in another role, or write it at the user level, because you can't change the role AP clerk, because that changes it for everyone who has AP clerk. And it's potential that not everyone who has AP clerk should have the same access of row security data access type scenarios. So again, even more reason to have these roles and have this access separated out. It makes for easier control going forward, but more importantly, ease of distribution for your functional and your data access. All right, Brittany, that is all that we had today. I've got questions coming up. I'll turn it over to you for this at this point.
Thanks, Kyle. Now I would like to cover a few follow-up items and then move on to our question and answer section of our webcast. Our webcast today is part of GSI's free ongoing educational webcast series on JD Edwards. Our upcoming webcasts are listed on the screen. To view our most up-to-date schedule, please visit getgsi.com/JD Edwards. Check out our ERP Talk, which is a problem-solving forum where you can get your JD Edwards and other enterprise application questions answered. Stay connected with us on social media. All of our handles are currently listed on the screen. You can see our most up-to-date posts on webcasts, events, industry insights, and so much more. GSI provides extensive free educational resources for the JD Edwards community, including our weekly educational webcast, monthly newsletter called the GSI Insider, online resource center where you can access our on-demand webcast white papers, etc., on-site and virtual workshops. If you would like to sign up for our weekly email reminders for upcoming webcasts, our monthly newsletter, or create an account to access our resource center, go to getgsi.com, go to resources and events on the main menu, select JD Edwards, select appropriate link on the right. While I see we've had we've already had several questions submitted online. I would like to remind everyone that if you still would like to submit a question, you can do so using the questions panel in the GoToWebinar console window on the right-hand side of your screen. If you minimize your console earlier, please click the left arrow to redisplay the questions panel.
All right, thanks, Brittany. I got a couple questions here. One's from Philip. He's got a two-parter. I might have answered his question throughout the presentation, but I'm gonna pose it anyway so that it can get out there. With inclusive mode, is it possible to set security such that different row security can be applied to different applications? This is type 9, by the way, so we'll get into this. For example, a user could run a balance sheet report in 2 companies, but only enter journal entries for one of the 2 companies, or does row security apply uniformly across all applications identified in a user role? Row security applies to any of the tables, so you can define the table. So if it's applications, again, this goes back to what applications use what tables. So if you've got P0911, which is journal entries, and I believe it's the FO901 or FO911, that's obviously, those two are interconnected. If you've got data or row security on the FO901 or the FO911, which the P0911 uses those tables, then yes, the row security is active for that program. The second part of the question, excuse me, it's a bit long, so let me get back to where I was here. And then Philip again, he says, seems like type 9 would answer the previous question. You're correct, it would. Is there a performance hit with type 9 security if many applications and tables type 9 records need to be added to a role? Is type 9 supported in versions prior to 9.2? Yes, I believe it is. I don't know how far it goes back. And no, to the best of my knowledge, and that I have not seen, using type 9 security does not take a performance hit. Obviously, that would depend on your memory sizes, your heap sizes, what's available, if you're, the scroll to end capabilities, that sort of thing. So that's more on the CNC database side, but no, applying type 9 security, I have not seen causes any performance hits. Great questions, though. Got a couple more, one from Steven here. If I am in an exclusive mode and want to go to inclusive, what is the best method to not interrupt current production? And if this were to be done, what would the effects be on current production? Okay, two-parter here. First part, what is the best method? So best method in current production, if you're not just out of the box and you are you're operating in live production, you've got row security already implemented, however it's not set up properly, it's not working the way you want, and you've been instructed, or you feel like it's better that we need to go from either inclusive to exclusive, exclusive to inclusive, the best way forward would be use the use a role method. Set up roles that have the row security that you want. It would need to be tested. So we would need to then switch the mode, but it can be tested and verified, and then that model deployed into production. As for the what could it cause, well, if you're in exclusive mode, again, you're denying what you don't want users to see. So if you flip to inclusive without planning or the proper roles being set up, you have basically just flipped the switch to say, okay, well, now we're in inclusive and I have no's, and inclusive doesn't care about no's, it needs the yeses. So you're in virtually an open system. So it definitely needs to be planned out and should be thought of prior, in advance, and a strict plan followed. All right, Brittany, that is all the questions I see as of now. I know Brittany may say this too, but if there are any questions whatsoever on this presentation, please don't hesitate to reach out. My email is right there. The security team will be more than happy to answer questions, even get on a call and work through some stuff with you. So appreciate you being on the call today, the webinar today, and yeah, let us know if there's any questions. Go ahead, Brittany.
Thank you so much, Kyle, for your presentation today, and thank you everyone for your questions today. As a follow-up from today's webcast, we ask that you complete a short 1-minute survey when you exit. You are receiving an email with a link to our resource center on our website where you can access the recording from today's webcast as well as a copy of the presentation. After today's webcast, we will do a drawing for the $25 Amazon gift card. Anyone that attended the entire webcast will be eligible. We'll notify the winner. If you have any follow-up questions, you can contact Kyle or I, and we will get back to you. Our contact information is on the screen. Thanks again for attending our webcast, and have a great day.